I'm going to get us to take some notes real quick over these solubility rules. So maybe you can title this little section of notes States of Matter. I just misspelled matter, but I fixed it, so it's all good. States of matter. We know about different states of matter, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a solid. There's liquid. There's gas. And there's also, for our purposes in here, aqueous. Aqueous and plasma, not the same. The abbreviation for something that's solid is going to be S, liquid, L, gas, G, and aqueous is going to be AQ. And when we write out formulas, it's going to be important that we designate which we have. In other words, if it's S, L, G, or AQ, when you're doing a reaction like we've been doing, remember we balanced those reactions yesterday, we also need to include their state of matter. So let me show you how we're going to think about this. If it's a solid, or if you have an element, it's to be a solid if it's a lone metal, or if it is something that is insoluble. And we'll notice that something is insoluble because it'll be insoluble on the chart. Liquids. Water is a good liquid. It's one of few. Bromine and mercury are also liquids. For gases, any non-metallic compound is going to be a good gas. Non-metallic compound means it's going to be a covalent compound. And then something that's aqueous has to be soluble. And you'll notice, or you will know that it's soluble because it'll be listed as being soluble on the chart. Cool? So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. And I want us to make sure we have this chart somewhere handy. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of compounds real quick. I'm just going to get you to write these out. There we go. 9 questions I'm going to get you to write out. Just a little bit. Okay? Let's look at these. Iron, just a lone metal, so I'm going to list it as being solid. How about NaCl? Is that a lone metal? Seems like it's a compound to me, right? When it's a compound, you know it's not going to be under the liquid category because it's not water, Br2, or Hg. And it's not a covalent compound because it's got a metal in it, so it's liquid or gas. So we need to look at our chart, basically. There's our chart. This chart, if you want to jot this maybe on your chart, this solubility chart that we have in front of us is based on the anions, the negatively charged species or member of that compound, which in this case was chlorine. So let's look for chlorine on this chart. Have you found it? Look for chlorine on this chart. Gotta look at the chart. Don't look at me. I'm not the chart. I'm Mr. Fields. Did we find chlorine on this chart? Okay. It says that chlorine is under the soluble compounds area. So chlorine's probably going to be soluble. Are we all together on this? There are exceptions to this. Compounds with Ag, Pb, and Hg. What is your Cl with? Na, right? Is Na in that list of exceptions? So it's soluble, right? Soluble was for aqueous. So we're going to write AQ right next to NaCl. See how we do that? Use the chart. CO2. Is CO2 going to be a liquid? Nope. Is it a covalent compound, CO2? It is, so it's going to be listed as a gas. The next one is HNO3. Is HNO3 going to be a liquid? No. Is it going to be a gas? No. We're going to look at our chart then. Remember, your chart is based on the anions. The anion in this case is nitrate, NO3. Let me know when you have found NO3 on the chart. Someone says I found it. NO3 is right there, correct? It says NO3 is soluble most of the time. What's an exception to NO3 solubility? There are none. So that means that HNO3 or anything else NO3 is always going to be soluble. So what am I going to write down? Because aqueous goes with soluble. The term aqueous means that it can mix well with water. Solid means that it does not mix well with water. It sits in a glob at the bottom of the test tube or beaker. This mixes well. Like salt, you know, mixes well with water. That's why we wrote aqueous there. The next one, N2O5. I'll let you take just a second. Why don't you solve N2O5 on your paper real quick. In 205, what did we get? In 205, I would say it's going to be a, we said gas, right? It's a covalent compound. Raise your hand if you got that right. Very good. Covalent compounds. How about Ca3PO4? Why don't you take a second and work on that one? Let's figure out if it's SLG or AQ. Work with someone around you. Get assistance if you need it. How about Ca3PO4? Not going to be a liquid or a gas, so we're going to look at the chart. Remember, the chart's based on the anion, which is PO4. PO4 is in the insoluble section. It says some exceptions to that are NH4 and the alkali metals. What is the alkali metals? Can someone remind me? The first chart. Is Ca in the first column? It's not. So is Ca an exception to this? No, it is not. That means that this compound is going to be insoluble. It's going to be a solid. Raise your hand if you got that correct. Very good. Awesome. Okay. Why don't you work on 7, 8, and 9 with someone around you, and then we'll check that in just a second.